Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really impressed that so many people are inside on the first and potentially only sunny day of our year. So thank you all. I want to thank some people who are here today who are very special to me. I would like to start off by thanking my mother and father, Marge and Stephen Kafoury. My sister, Catherine, who is the self-proclaimed non-political one of the family. And my husband, Nick Blosser. Unfortunately, my lovely children could not join us today. I made them go to school. There haven't been that many days of school this year, and I figured that's where they should be. So. And thank you to all of you for coming today. Early in the morning of November 8th, I was standing in my bedroom, looking in my closet. Like every working mother, I was trying to get dressed, trying to remember everything I had to do, and trying to get everyone out the door on time. In my closet, I didn't have any suffragette white, but I did have a black pantsuit, and I very deliberately put it on in solidarity with other women and in anticipation of the historic day ahead. I thought of my daughter, Anna, who was as eager as I was to see a woman in the White House. That night, as the outcome of the presidential election became clear, I was filled with grief. My daughter Anna was devastated. We could not take our eyes off the TV news. We kept watching election results, willing them to change. But something else came clear to me that night. The voters here in our local community bucked that national trend. We passed the first ever housing bond to build more affordable housing. Voters here in Multnomah County stood up and elected an all-women board of county commissioners. When I think about the colleagues who I get to go to work with every day, I feel hope. Women of color make up the board of Multnomah County Commissioners for the very first time. Yeah, that deserves applause. We are all mothers. We are all committed to moving our county through the challenges ahead. And we're here to get things done. Each of my colleagues brings their considerable talents and leadership skills to Multnomah County. That means new insights and new perspectives applied to our work. Already, I'm seeing a difference. Commissioner Loretta Smith is passionate about jobs for at-risk teens who face disparities in education and in work opportunities. Multnomah County's Summer Works program puts hundreds of kids in summer jobs, providing what Loretta calls life lessons about personal responsibility and the pride of earning a paycheck. By partnering with local businesses and government, we can provide job training and inspiration that will last a lifetime. Commissioner Jessica Vega Peterson worked on transportation and safety investments as a member of the Oregon legislature. Now she's working to improve safety on our roads in Multnomah County and repeat our Selwood Bridge success on the Burnside Bridge. Our goal is to make sure that the Burnside Bridge, which is a lifeline route, is usable after a major earthquake. Commissioner Sharon Myron is focused on addressing our mental health crisis. As an emergency room doctor, she brings an important perspective to the problems we face in healthcare and mental health care. And those years in the ER give her a sense of urgency that I appreciate. And Commissioner Lori Stegman is working with businesses, nonprofits, and the cities in East County to make sure that families are getting the services they need. As a successful small business owner, Commissioner Stegman knows how numbers work, and she makes sure that every dollar counts. I'm inspired by how much progress Multnomah County has made in confronting our community's challenges. We've housed homeless veterans and families, restoring dignity and respect. We expanded physical and mental health services, extending care to thousands who previously had none. We launched an aggressive replacement of obsolete buildings and bridges, ensuring a safe and functional future. I'm ready to work with this board to tackle what lies ahead and I can tell you, it's not going to be an easy path. We have worked hard to put the county on sound financial footing, but we are bracing for a storm of unknown size. State and federal commitments to our community are uncertain. We don't know whether critical investments in housing, mental and physical health care, and other services will continue. And the question before us is, how do we maintain our humanity and our ability to keep Multnomah County a community that people want to and can afford to live in? Yesterday, I released my executive budget. The uncertainty we face has led me to develop a budget that builds on our progress in key areas, keeps our organization fiscally sound, and directs county dollars to where they can accomplish the most. If we aren't careful, we will spend more and more each year on emergency rooms, homeless shelters, and jail beds. And at the end of the day, we will still have thousands of people who are homeless, incarcerated, and suffering from curable and preventable diseases. I know that many of you today are as mad at the state of politics in Washington, D.C. as I am. But know this, we can't wait for Washington to solve our problems, but we can come together around our values of decency, compassion, and fairness. We can come together for our children, for the air they breathe and the water they drink, for the education they require and the opportunity we can create. We can face our racist and homophobic past and work for a more equitable and just future. We can change the way that government works and put people ahead of process, and through a common mission, change the trajectory for our community and make it the place we want our children to inherit. We can make a difference, and I'm ready to lead the way. The journey of this new board has just begun here at Multnomah County, but for the next several minutes, I want to tell you about the things that we are doing that should give us all hope. When I was elected as Multnomah County Chair, I sat down with leaders from the cities of Gresham and Portland to talk about how we could work together to better serve the growing number of people in our community who find themselves without a home. We formed a partnership, A Home for Everyone, that brought together faith, philanthropy, and business leaders, along with local government, to change the way we were addressing the homeless crisis. The first challenge we gave ourselves was ending veterans' homelessness. Homelessness is tragic. It shouldn't happen to anyone. And the sad reality is that the need in our community is far greater than our resources. But when we tell a veteran who is sleeping on our streets that she is not a priority, that is indefensible. I know I'm not alone in thinking that. When President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama challenged us to step up and end veterans' homelessness, matching federal resources with local dollars to get vets off the street, we didn't struggle to find allies. Landlords, business owners, churches, nonprofits, they all pitched in. And by setting a clear goal, a shared mission, and knocking down problems as they popped up, we got results. Over the past 2 years, we've housed more than 1,300 veterans. We were the first West Coast city to be recognized by the White House for effectively ending veterans' homelessness. It's proof that if we dedicate resources and time, we can get big things done. In December, we got together with federal officials to talk about this effort and recognize the hard work that it takes. That's when I met Daniel Kalunke. Daniel served 4 years in the U.S. Navy, and when he got back, he found a job as a diesel mechanic. He was doing really well. He got promoted to supervisor, and he got a raise. Then he started having trouble walking. This went on for 3 months until one day he fell and got a concussion. He went to the ER, and at 38 years old, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Everything in his life changed. He couldn't work, he fell behind on his bills, and he lost his housing. The next few years were rough. Daniel alternated between sleeping on the floors of friends' and families' homes, staying in residential programs, sleeping in his car, and camping in the backyard of a friend's house. But mostly he worried that he'd never be able to live next to his daughter again. So he called transition projects, and he got enrolled in supportive services for veterans' families. SFVF connected him to Veterans Affairs to improve his health care. And most importantly, he got a federal housing voucher that allowed him to afford an apartment near his daughter. Daniel is housed today because of our work locally to match the effort that the federal government put into ending veterans' homelessness. And he's giving back. He's apprenticing to become a mentor in Transition Project's mentoring program, helping others through his experience and his heart. Unfortunately, this work is being threatened by the Trump administration, which wants to claw back money tied to veterans' housing, threatening to dismantle the very system that got Daniel into a home. If these cuts go forward, this is a rebuke of the hard-working men and women who serve us abroad every day. It sends a clear signal that we're with you today while you're fighting for us, but once you get home, all bets are off. That's not what Multnomah County is all about. We take care of each other, and it's that basic dignity of mutual respect that makes our community strong and resilient when times are tough. I wanted to start out today by talking about housing because the housing crisis in this community is very real. And housing plays such a critical role in every service we deliver. But mostly it's because I believe there is nothing so fundamental as the need to have a roof overhead, a place to call home. Last fall, I sat down with some caring and heroic teachers and their grade school students who were staying at our family homeless shelter. These kids were delightful. They were funny, friendly, smart, and resilient. But as we talked, I very quickly saw the toll that the housing crisis took on their young lives. The stress of parents facing massive rent increases and eviction. The upheaval of moving in and out of neighborhoods, friends' houses, and motels. They had to change schools, change friends. How can we expect these kids to succeed in school when they don't have a place to study and they don't know where they're going to sleep that night? Housing can also make the difference in drug treatment. We know now that addiction, I'm so stuck on housing. We know now that addiction is disease. It's not a moral failing. And with treatment and support, people can and do recover. Evidence shows that supportive housing helps people maintain their sobriety, helps rebuild the life and work skills they need to get on with their lives. Despite record low unemployment, Multnomah County residents don't make enough money to meet their basic needs: food, housing, and medicine. So when housing costs are spiking, there are a lot more families having difficult conversations about what they're not going to pay for this month. Our budget at Multnomah County isn't big enough to help everyone who is being priced out of the housing market. So how we spend our dollars really matters. That's why when I started as chair, I wanted to fix some of the inefficiencies of our system so that we could serve more people. It used to be that the city of Portland was responsible for helping homeless individuals, while the county was responsible for helping homeless families. That never made any sense to me. So I worked with city leaders to form the Joint Office of Homeless Services, bringing together city and county resources into one office. Having these vital services in one place makes it easier to track the tax dollars we spend on homeless services, ensuring that we're getting our money's worth for every dollar spent. It's also allowing us to reduce duplication and create more effective services. And when crisis strikes, like it did this winter, having a clear chain of command to lead the response is vital. Every year, Portland and Gresham and Multnomah County brace for cold winter weather. We open up temporary shelters and we maintain staff on call for when the temperatures drop and our most vulnerable residents face deadly danger. This year, we partnered with Tom Cody and Project Development to open up an 80-bed shelter in a downtown Portland building set for renovation. And just a few weeks later, we opened up another temporary shelter donated by the Menashe family. These facilities were on top of the new year-round shelter beds we opened last year, providing a safe space for families, seniors, veterans, and people escaping domestic violence. But the winter storm that arrived, at one point dumping nearly a foot of snow in just one day, stunned us all. These kind of events are historic, and I'm certain that my son Jacob will tell the story of the winter without school for many years. But they're also incredibly dangerous. As anyone who braved our streets during the worst of our winter weather will know, it was difficult to get to work in a Subaru. For those who only have a pair of broken shoes, things were much worse. This is where I have to stop for a second and make it clear that this story has two aspects. Our community came together in unparalleled ways to open up government office buildings, American Legion halls, and community centers. At the peak of the response, we had an additional 748 shelter beds open just for the storm. And most importantly, no one was turned away from shelter. The stories of those who came inside were heartbreaking. A young woman turned out of her boyfriend's hotel room in the dead of winter, her mother too far away to pick her up. A young man who sleeps beneath a bridge arrived at the Portland building shelter just as he was experiencing the first stages of hypothermia. A woman who sleeps at the Portland airport and has become a familiar face to the vendors is looking for a permanent place to stay, but she can't afford the rent. Rising rents and stagnant wages are turning our streets into a resting place of last resort for working people. And when the streets turn deadly, hundreds of everyday people, government employees working double shifts, and members of the faith community stood up and said, "We will help." Our community cares so deeply for one another that we will come together when things are scary. When danger is on the horizon, we hold tight, and it makes a difference, but not for everyone. The reality is that 6 people died on our cold streets this winter. Each of their stories is unique, but they were all homeless. 7 years ago, I started working with Street Roots and its executive director, Israel Baer, to start Domicile Unknown, an annual accounting of those who die on our streets homeless. When you read this report online, it makes clear that the way our nation has defined poverty is fundamentally wrong. Poverty isn't a problem inflicted upon the poor by their own actions. It's a product of a lack of good-paying jobs, affordable health care, and a stable home. It's also a product of institutional racism at the foundation of our economy, our healthcare system, and in our very neighborhoods. I think it's important to make clear today that there's no magic solution to homelessness and poverty. People become homeless because they can't pay the rent. We get them back into housing by helping them pay that rent. In 2015, a Portland woman named Randy was counting her blessings. She had her sobriety, and she had a husband who earned enough so that she could stay home and raise their daughter and son, and their hamster and their cat and their 2 dogs. And then her husband went back to using drugs, and he took off. And she found out that he actually hadn't been paying the bills. Their car was repossessed, and an eviction notice arrived. Randy borrowed her father's red Fiat. The whole family, kids and pets, crammed in with her. They even stayed at her mom's a few nights. But some nights they all slept in the car. Eventually, Randy put up a tent on the Spring Water Corridor Trail. That's where another camper told her about Join, one of the many nonprofits that works with the new City-County Joint Office of Homeless Services. That nonprofit, which helps support individuals and families as they transition off the streets, enrolled her children in state health care and helped her sign up for food stamps. The organization paid back rent on her old house so she could move back in, and Join even helped with Christmas presents for her kids. In April 2017, Randy unwrapped her family's first real portraits since her husband left. Her kids, thriving now in school, were beaming. She'd wanted to give up, she said, but she knew she couldn't. Her kids needed her. Finding the dollars to help families like Randy's, that's the enormous challenge, and one that's made worse when the federal government is pulling back on investments in housing vouchers and affordable housing development. That's why it's even more important today to identify the best way to spend the limited dollars that we have. Working with business leaders in the community, we can lower the cost of our operations and help more people. Just this week, we celebrated the opening of another 100-person shelter. For those Portlanders, you'll know it as Schleifer Furniture on Southeast Grand Avenue. The space is being donated by Brad Malson of Beam Development and Urban Development Partners. Since we opened the Joint Office of Homeless Services last year, we've doubled the number of shelter beds in our community, and we're moving thousands of people back into permanent housing. Last year, 25,000 people took advantage of our services. This is all possible because of the unprecedented financial commitment from the City of Portland and Multnomah County. We added $20 million in new funding to these vital services last year. My budget keeps our commitment in place, and I had to make some tough trade-offs to make this happen. I'm counting on Mayor Ted Wheeler and the Portland City Council to make good on the city's commitment to this work. This strong partnership isn't just about Portland. Gresham Mayor Shane Bemis and Councilor Carolyn Eccles have been important voices at the table, bringing a focus on East Multnomah County's needs. This last year, we opened up the first shelter in Gresham, providing a safe place for 90 women every night, including victims of domestic violence. And in the city of Gresham, the county is funding outreach workers and homeless service specialists for the first time. Putting boots on the ground is making a big difference. This is all part of the plan that A Home for Everyone put in place. It relies on 3 strategies. The first is preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place. The second is getting people directly into permanent housing as quickly as possible. And the third is funding a safety net of shelter beds for those who currently don't have housing. We have made incredible progress on all 3 goals over the past year, and this winter storm proves that we can't back down. We need to show the federal and state government what it looks like when a community is willing to make a commitment to those who have no place to call home. And we need them to keep up their commitments on this work. That's funding for the Emergency Housing Account and State Homeless Assistance Program at the state level, and it's housing vouchers and new resources for building affordable housing at the federal level. I will keep fighting for more support from the state and federal government, but we need to show them what commitment looks like. Intervention and crisis response are a critical part of Multnomah County's mission. But often, the best intervention comes before a crisis strikes, and this is especially true when it comes to kids and families. That's why Multnomah County originally built our network of Sun Schools. At each of our 84 school sites around the county, we offer a safe place for kids to be after school. And we bring services to parents, too, making sure that even when they're overworked and overburdened, they have the support they need to help their kids thrive. Everyone loves the Sun program, and everyone loves their Sun school. But last year, we determined that it was time to make some changes. As the community we serve becomes more diverse, we need to invest in strategies that will meet the needs of all of our kids and families. So we changed the way we organized and allocated our resources. We now invest more than half of our Sun School resources in culturally specific services that we believe will help eliminate structural barriers and improve outcomes for kids and families. By working with providers like Latino Network, NEA, Self-Enhancement Inc., and IRCO, we are building on the deep connections that these organizations have in our neighborhoods, making sure that each one of our kids gets the support they need. And for the first time this year, our Sun program will be partnering with the City of Gresham, bringing a new mentoring program to kids in East Multnomah County. In January, when I heard that families at the Normandy Apartments in the Cully neighborhood had received up to 100% rent increases, I knew we had to act, and act quickly. I asked county staff what could we do to at least help those families stay to the end of the school year, but Latino Network, our Sun provider, was already on it, ready with flexible rent assistance, available to help keep those 26 kids at regular elementary. The landlord later put off the rent hike. But But we know that having a system in place to keep kids in school and solve problems as they arise is the best way to ensure that our kids have the support that they need. And it gives our staff the ability to work effectively to prevent problems from getting much worse. Making sure kids have a place to go after school and someone they can talk to when things are difficult can go a long way to making sure they succeed in school and stay out of trouble. That means investing in our kids is the right thing to do, and it's the financially smart thing to do. Last year, we started the process of moving public safety dollars away from our jails and instead directing those dollars to making our community safer. Setting out that goal in my budget last year made the county's commitment to this real, and it brought people to the table. Today, we have a solid commitment from District Attorney Rod Underhill, Sheriff Mike Reese, the police, and our parole officers to find ways to divert people from jail into the treatment that helps get them back on track. On February 27th of this year, we started the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program. Modeled after a successful program from King County, Washington, LEAD will allow police and prosecutors to divert people with a low-level drug offense into services instead of sending them to jail. By partnering with Central City Concern, we are responding to a public health problem with services instead of handcuffs. We're working hard to reduce our reliance on jail because not only is it the most expensive option, in some cases, sending someone to jail for a low-level offense makes things worse. That's particularly true for people experiencing mental illness. Earlier this year, Disability Rights Oregon issued a report that detailed troubling and heartbreaking conditions in our county jail. I was appalled by the report, and I immediately directed Health Department Head Joanne Fuller to assume responsibility for Corrections Health and to work with Dr. Michael Seal, the Medical Director for Corrections Health, to increase access to treatment and recovery for people in jail. My budget includes new funding for mental health counselors at the jail booking area to improve coordination of community services for individuals leaving the jail. I also included funding to expand clinic hours and directed our Corrections Health leadership to work closely with jail command staff to ensure that the care provided in jail is timely and meets the unique needs of that individual. I'm encouraged that Sheriff Reese is committed to improving training for his corrections deputies and putting in place clear standards and expectations. While these changes are necessary, we know that jail is not an appropriate place for treating people with mental health and substance abuse issues. And I'm proud that Multnomah County provides crisis intervention and peer navigators who can help people across the county during a mental health crisis, and that we're investing more in mental health services in our schools. My budget includes a new investment in mental health case management services, furthering our collaboration with teachers, improving our outreach and prevention efforts in schools. These dollars are going to go to where there is the biggest gap between the existing services and the need, and that's in East Multnomah County. It's going to take all of us working together to make sure that our neighbors, parents, sons and daughters get the help they need. I talked a little bit earlier about emergency rooms, and what I think has been lost in the debate over Obamacare is the direct benefit that we all receive when the government makes healthcare affordable for working people. Because we decided long ago that no one should be turned away from an emergency room or left bleeding on the street, we created a system of care that relies upon the government to fund healthcare for the poor in times of need. But that crisis care is the most expensive health care that we can provide. The Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, said, let's turn this problem around. Instead of forcing the American people to buy only the most expensive care, we would help them buy health care that reduces costs in the long run. Accessible, affordable health care. That's a family doctor. It's free birth control and family planning. And it's preventive care that stops problems before they occur. Here in Multnomah County, we've been working with families to improve their health even before they see their physician. Angela Reed gained 70 pounds during her first pregnancy. She hated the extra weight and was terrified that she'd die young and leave her kids. She was checking in for a medical appointment at the Mid-County Health Center when staff asked if she wanted to sign up for a farm share. Instead of the usual $100, one that puts it out of reach for many working families, she could get a full share for just $5 a month. Every week, Zanger Farms popped up a full farmer's market at the clinic and hosted cooking classes to teach families how to use these unfamiliar vegetables. It was an idea dreamed up by health department staff and funded by grants, and Angela and her kids dove in. Due to her new healthy eating habits, Angela lost 50 pounds, and her kids now eat a lot of vegetables. She said, "I feel better than I have in 10 years." For a small investment, we can change a mother's future and the future for her children. As a mother of 3, I take very seriously our community's commitment to our children. So when I heard last year about toxic metal emissions in Portland, like many of you, I was shaken. My son, Alexander, attends Cleveland High School. And in his school's auditorium, I heard from hundreds of parents who are worried, just like me, about their children's health. They wanted to know what their government was going to do about it, and I did too. I added my voice to the chorus calling on the State Department of Environmental Quality to step up and enforce regulations that protect our air and water from polluters. And I'm happy to say that by standing together, we made a difference. We have beefed up air monitoring to better track emissions, and the state has brought glass manufacturers into compliance with clean air regulations. But the real fight is over diesel. We need to make sure that our children aren't riding on school buses that are emitting toxic exhaust, and the trucks sitting idling on our freeways aren't polluting their lungs. Along with many of you, I've been pushing the legislature to put in place new restrictions on diesel pollution, but it's an uphill battle. I'm not giving up. And one thing that was made clear that night at the Cleveland High Auditorium, our voice matters. When we stand together, we can force change and make our community stronger. Earlier this month, I was proud to stand with Mayor Ted Wheeler and other local leaders to announce Portland and Multnomah County's commitment to transition our community to 100% clean energy by 2050. Showing the world that local government will step into the void left by Washington, D.C. is important. But the most powerful speaker there that day was Jeremy Clark. The leaders of Portland and Multnomah County have great power, Jeremy said, but with that great power comes great responsibility. You have the responsibility to keep my future bright. He's 12, and he's right. If we don't address climate change today, this problem will slip away from us, and so will Jeremy's future. If we let this go, we will face a generation of children whose life expectancies are shorter, whose lifetime incomes are lower, and whose prospects for a better life are worse than ours. Failing to take action today is accepting a legacy of failure. We are facing challenging times. The federal government is threatening to end energy assistance for the poor and elderly, and I expect that we're going to be fighting this battle over the Affordable Health Care Act all summer. My budget takes into account this uncertainty, and it offers a balanced path forward for Multnomah County. 13 years ago, Multnomah County knew that the Selwood Bridge was in bad shape. It had a rating of 2 on a scale of 1 to 100. But we had no plan, no money, and no partners. Over time, the community pulled together a plan. We went to work bringing the City of Portland, the federal government, and state lawmakers to fund the project, and we got to work. Today, the completed bridge offers expanded bicycle and pedestrian connections between Selwood and Southwest Portland, and it is one of 2 bridges sound enough to withstand a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. I got that right. On the first day the bridge was opened to the public, hundreds of community members came out to celebrate. I've never seen so many people excited about a road project. But I think at the end of the day, people turned out to celebrate the end of the construction gridlock and the new connection that was made in their community. I've seen a lot of ideas and plans put on a shelf and forgotten, and it drives me nuts. Voters did not elect us to talk about the problems, they sent us in to fix them. So as chair, I've pushed for our county to replace our central courthouse, which has been talked about for decades, but is now finally under construction. And we broke ground on a new health department headquarters, which will bring hundreds of good-paying jobs to the Old Town, Chinatown neighborhood. Together, these three projects total $750 million. Those dollars are building safe, accessible, and efficient infrastructure that will last into the next century. And for the first time, we've entered into a project labor agreement for the courthouse and the health department headquarters to ensure that public dollars are invested in our community and creating living wage, local union jobs, and expanded opportunities for women and minority contractors and workforce. My budget includes $25 million for these infrastructure projects, and every dollar we can spend today on these big projects saves us money and finance costs later. That's important because we're looking at cutting programs this year while thousands of families across the county are on the edge. That means spending where it matters. For example, we've established a side account with the Public Employees Retirement System, allowing us to bring a greater return on the dollars that Multnomah County has set aside to smooth out the rising costs of our payroll. This makes good on our promises to our employees and to our taxpayers. And my budget is balanced for the next 3 years. This fiscal oversight has led to an upgrade in our bond rating, and now we have the highest rating that Moody's offers. I take seriously the responsibility in front of me as Multnomah County Chair to make sure that each investment we're making is the right one. And every new expenditure in my budget is there because I believe it will reduce our long-term financial responsibilities, improve the lives of children and families who will build up our community over the coming decades, or because it reflects our core values and represents a promise that we've made to uphold them. And so I find it ironic that a nation whose economy was bolstered by immigrants is now tearing itself apart to vilify them. Like many Oregonians, my family history is an immigration story. My great-grandfather came to this country from Syria. He started a business, creating jobs for local workers. He raised his family and became a central part of the community of Elo, Idaho, and eventually he became the mayor of that small town. Nader Kafoury, like so many immigrants in Multnomah County, came to the United States in search of a better life, and he found one. And by being a shining beacon of light, our country has for generations inspired people of all walks of life to leave the country that they grew up in, to take their savings, their smarts, their hard work, and bring it to the United States. When immigrants come to Multnomah County, they bring with them a culture of resilience. They come ready to learn and to teach and to work, and they enrich our community. And when we describe in sweeping generalities who immigrants are or who refugees are, we ignore their individual experiences, the stories that they tell their children and their grandchildren, and the lessons that they can teach us. We also ignore the values that bind us together. Earlier this year, I was invited by a group of young people to a demonstration in front of the Portland offices of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE. The organizers were dreamers, young people who came to this country with their parents as children and know no home better than Multnomah County. They were fearful of the rhetoric and the actions of the federal government. They were fearful that they might be deported. And so they did the thing that any American would do. They called their friends. They got together and they went downtown to tell the government, "You've got it wrong." Instead of moving forward, this administration is turning back the clock, and that needs to change. These young people were voting with their feet because that's the only vote they have, and that's the real irony. We don't want to be a nation that says to some of its most promising young people who've been working to make their community better, "Get out of here." We can't solve everything at Multnomah County, but we need to pull together during these hard times to show the rest of the country what some hardworking people can do when they put their minds to it. I'm going to keep calling on our federal government to designate our courthouses and our health clinics as sensitive places where people can go to hold an abuser accountable or to seek life-saving care. And I'm going to keep calling on our federal government to recognize that everyone in Multnomah County deserves the opportunity deserves access to opportunity and justice. We need a rational pathway to citizenship for this country, for the millions of people who've been left behind by a Congress that won't act when the people tell them to. If there's one thing that I've learned since I've been at Multnomah County, is that I am never alone in this work. Every day, nearly 6,000 county employees bring their excellence, passion, and commitment to the mission. From the crisis line workers who stayed at their desks overnight during the ice storms, to the community health workers who dreamed up the farmers markets for patients and found the funding for it, to the health inspectors who work with business owners every day to make sure that our food is safe and their restaurant and food carts are thriving. Thank you. You make all the difference. But just don't take my word for it. All around this room are people whose lives have been transformed by this work. Their stories are in front of you, and I'm going to ask them each to stand because their stories show the difference that local government can make. Jaquaeus Montgomery, Wendy Shumway, Wendy, Pedro Delgado, Carol Hinasoa, Daniel Kalunky, and Jasmika Weathers. Thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for allowing us to share your stories and your success. We've got to build a legacy worthy of our efforts and of passing along to our children. This isn't just a political imperative, it's a moral one, because our children will inherit what we don't accomplish. And if we let go of our values and let our democracy waver, our kids will be left to fix it. And if we spend poorly on programs that don't work or a wall that we don't need on our southern border, our kids will be the one to pay for it. And if we don't find a way to bring people together with different outlooks, political views, and backgrounds, it will be up to our kids to find a politics that does. I watched my mother challenge the idea that women should be excluded from political dialogue. I watched her challenge the notion that the poor were on their own, that no one cared, and I saw her fight for better housing, better health care, and equality for all people. My only hope is that my daughter Anna will say the same of me someday when she reaches her goal of becoming President of the United States. And I know that it's in us all here today to live up to that challenge. Together, we can give our children a community and an inheritance that we will be proud to pass along. Thank you very much.